Welcome to a special edition of The Point of View on Channel 1 Television, coming to you on the back of the inauguration of the President of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. Over 21 heads of government visited him as he was sworn in for his second time. Among the prominent guests was his longtime friend and former President of South Africa, His Excellency President Jacob Zuma. Tonight we sit to chat with him about what he thinks of Ghana's democracy, his own politics in South Africa, where he almost nearly sent the ANC, the party he's founded and loved, back to opposition. He's now the official opposition party in South Africa. He heads over 58 members of parliament in that particular country. We'll speak to him about those issues and more when we come back.
Life is a celebration of moments. Big and small.
The sun is scorching, I'm feeling the heat.
With Piva Drink, every moment becomes a refreshing celebration. From the beach to your home, in every corner of your world, Piva Drink adds a burst of refreshment.
Give me Piva cocktail and tangerine.
Celebrate every moment with Piva Drink. Refreshment for every occasion. Piva Drink, a taste you will love.
P for Piva.
This advert is FDA approved.
President Zuma, thank you for agreeing to talk to us on The Point of View. Good evening.
Good evening, my brother.
Welcome back to Ghana.
Thank you very much.
Is this one of your favorite African destinations?
Yes, it is. It is a wonderful kind of destination and also historical in the continent.
Why did you make it a point to be here at President Mahama's inauguration?
Well, I came because I thought something was happening in Ghana, knowing him, knowing his views, knowing what he is capable of doing. And if he won, I was very happy. To me, it indicated that Africans are beginning to look at the elections differently. And I thought it was important to come to support him and also to see the Ghanaians, whether they were as happy as the South Africans are happy now. And I found them so happy. As you know, the place where we were, there was almost no place to put your feet because the people were here, which indicated the happiness that the people of Ghana were showing.
Ghana is considered one of the more stable democracies on the continent. How important was it for the election to go well? We now have a fifth transition in the Fourth Republic, almost flawless, in a continent with a lot of countries authoritarian and not many credible elections. How critical was it for Ghana to get it right?
Well, I think you needed a president like him, who I think historically has indicated his view about what Ghana should be and what should be done. And I think his coming in once again was important for the Ghanaian people, probably for the continent as well, because quite a number of us want this continent to change from what it has been. And I think people were feeling that, look, we need this man. They know him, fortunately, because he has been around before, but also he's a man who has always said what he was believing in, which was making a good impact to the people. And I think it was important that this happened. I also think it is important that Africa really should change from what it has been. As you know, the the kind of time that Africa has undertaken, number of changes have come. Some of them very painful, some of them very brutal. I think to have a situation where there is an open kind of contestation and the people choose who they want, that's what we need. What has been important with him is that he was not just saying, I want to be the leader. He was saying, I want to change the manner in which things have been happening. And I think he articulated that quite at length in his speech yesterday. What are the things that he thinks must be done? And that's what we want to do and move further than where we are now.
You mentioned in your earlier answer the history of Ghana. How important has this country been to the freedom fight in South Africa? The ANC, Mandela, and the MK that you, of course, not the party, but the spear of the nation as the militant wing. Because we've been told in history that our first president, Kwame Nkrumah, was quite sympathetic to the cause of the fight for freedom for black people in South Africa. Being one of the key figures of that era, anything to say about the importance and the role of Ghana in your march towards freedom in South Africa?
Well, firstly, the first president of Ghana was very clear about where Africa must go, how Africa must look like. I think he was very vocal about the freedom in Africa, what it means and how it should be. And I think that's the reason why our enemies felt that he should be removed. He was making Ghana to look more important in the continent as one of the first presidents to be in the continent of Africa. And of course, even when there had been coup d'etats or whatever, but I think Ghana has always showed itself that it is a country with very committed leaders, etc. But of course, things happen in the way at times people deal with things, etc. And therefore, Ghana remains an important country in the continent of Africa. And I think the coming in of the current one proved the point that Ghana still stands on the side of the people, wanting to move forward all the time. So we are very happy, and that's why we are here. I don't think we'd have come in big numbers as former president and president if that was not the case. I think the case was we see Ghana articulating what we believe needs to be the direction to where Africa must go.
What is your assessment of the state of democracy in the continent? Because apart from Ghana, Botswana, Mauritius, maybe Namibia and South Africa, you can't really say there are quality democracies on the continent by all the international standards. What's your assessment of democracy as the preferred option for governance on the continent?
Well, Africa, when it got freedom, I think there was an excitement in Africa because we were being decolonized, if that is a correct term. Yeah. At times we just use term when not necessarily the case. And Africa moved to a very large extent, very correctly. We became a kind of a kind of democracies that people were talking about. at the beginning, but something interfered with Africa, as you know. For an example, there was a coup d'etat period wherein the Western countries were actually organizing the coup d'etats against us. We tried to come in thereafter once again, and I think Africa was becoming very strong, and there was a time when Africa had a word to some degree, but again, they came back, as they always do. I think they shifted Africa to quite an extent. I think if you talk about today in Africa, there are issues. There are issues that are there which you wonder why, as well as how we gradually began to make Africa no longer as articulate about itself, as it were. If even now there are certain things that are happening in some part of the continent, but the continent is more quiet than what it would have been during that time. Leaders would have moved immediately, dealt with any issue that came. These days, they are very reluctant. At times, they are very quiet, even if things are going wrong. That tells you that the standard is no longer the same. It's no longer the same.
You're talking of quality of leadership on the continent to engage with the collective issues. You think there's been a reduction in the overall quality?
Yes, there has been. There has been. There are issues that are happening in Africa now, which if it was still at some point, Africa would be on its feet, would be there to say what is happening, to try to help and do whatever. It's no longer the same.
So which era are you looking at? Are you talking about the 80s, 90s? When did the quality start coming down, in your view? Well,
it started coming down slowly for some time now, for some time. I can't necessarily say this specific period, but it became obvious that Africa was no longer as vocal as it is. There's a time that Africa, even in the United Nations, had a very high voice, known and felt throughout. You no longer have that. Even the manner in which Africa was, in a sense, positioned, the regions, the AU, or the if we were at the the OAU, if the OAU was sitting, you would feel that the OAU has been sitting. Decisions have been taken. Countries were very jealous about their brothers and sisters. I think that has gone down. You begin now to have problems emerging here and there with no very obvious attention being given or intervention. So that's why I'm saying Africa has changed. But what is now promising is that some people, as you talk about here where we are, the reason where we are, we came to participate in the president being put into his place, and there are few such leaders that are beginning to emerge, where in the language is beginning to talk about us, about the fact that we need to be better than what we are. And I think that is absolutely important. I don't think you would have seen so many president and former presidents here if there wasn't a feeling that we needed to come back to where we're supposed to be, even to go to the final kind of the points that we want to reach. And I therefore feel, much as there may be difficulties, but I think there is an emerging feeling and emerging even articulation of the issues that face us as Africans.
President Zuma, let's talk about your own country. You are 83 years old. You're the leader of the official opposition party, the Mkhonto Mesizwe, which is, of course, called MK.
Mkhonto Mesizwe
Yes,
party.
yes, the party. Why would a man who fought apartheid, who helped to found the ANC, form a political party that is now against the party he loved so much? Can you explain to Ghanaians why you did that?
Well, it is not a secret that South Africa, historically, was the first country to establish an African political party to fight for freedom. And it had very clear reasons why that was the case. And I think it even went further than South Africa, influenced Africa to a large extent, particularly the countries around South Africa followed what South Africa was doing. And I think the ANC really represented the oppressed people. And we fought for a long time, precisely because South Africa has the biggest number of whites in the African continent. The white influence was quite big. That is why, much as it was the first to establish a national liberation movement, but it was the last to be free. It took many, many years. And then in the process of the fight, we very clearly made it very clear what type of freedom we wanted. We did not just talk about it in general. We went to the people of South Africa and asked them what type of freedom would they want the day we get our independence. And this was discussed by the entire country. We finally, the people emerged with a document called the Freedom Charter, which represents the views and the wishes of the South African people, the oppressed. And the document is still there. Our white government charged the leaders with treason for that document, where they thought it was moving against their own interests. And finally, they were proved by court that that document was absolutely correct. And that document says a lot about the land, about the wealth of the country, and everything. When we took over the country, we have not been able to implement that document. Now, that is first disappointment to the people of the country who had said to this organization, this is what we want. And the organization agreed that that was true. We had a tendency that the manner in which we reached our freedom, which we understood from a different kind of angle, that because there had been such a fight for a long time, we needed to have a kind of negotiations which will allow us to move. And the first point was, because we've been fighting for so long, we needed to get used to work together. That's why we had something called the what we call the government of national unity, because we're trying to unite the nation that had been fighting for so many people had died. Some died in prison, blah, blah, blah. But the belief was, once we finished the first term, the ANC then would take over, which indeed happened. Now, that's when it was supposed to implement its program, but it did not.
This is the ANC under Mandela.
That is starting from Mandela. From Mandela, Mandela only was in charge of the country for one term, which was the government of national unity. So he did not have to do any much things, except certain things. But thereafter, we're supposed to change and implement the will of the people that it had given us, that said to us, once you get free, there must be everything of what is in the Freedom Charter, right? It did not happen. But with time, as we were getting into the third, what is it? The 30 years. Yeah, 30 years. We were faced with a situation wherein the situation was deteriorating rather than moving forward. For reasons which are very long to talk about. It was this, that because with time, the leaders who were emerging were no longer just moving slowly, perhaps undermining our policies, etc. They were actually galloping to change and did not move the way we've been moving, wherein they were now moving away from the policies of the ANC, no longer talking about what the ANC stands for. In fact, quite a number of them being very friendly to those who were oppressing us before.
But let me just get this timeline straight. So Mandela is president from 94 to 1999. Thabo Mbeki takes over from 99 to 2008. There's a 1 year gap with Mr. Motlanthe, and then you come in 2009 to 2018. So you've had a long time. So did this deterioration coincide with your leadership too? Because you said after Mandela's government of national unity, the next government could not implement the charter. So that must have been in Mbeki. So what did you do in your time to implement
During my time, I'm sure if you look at the history of our country, you would see what I did. I did make attempts to implement what I believed needed to be implemented. You must also be aware that I could not finish my last term. I was, in fact, pushed out because the feeling was that I would be maybe doing a little bit more than what I had done. If you're in South Africa, South Africans will tell you what changes were brought during that time, because I was very clear that this is what we stood for. This is what I joined the organization for. But for the fact that I was trying to implement some of the things, it was then that if you were already maybe a journalist, you'll remember, I was given all the names, all the names by those who were feeling I should not be leading the country. And I finally was forced to resign because I was doing what I believed needed to be done. So I believed that, and I then went back and looked at the organization going down even faster in terms of not doing what it was supposed to be doing as directed by the people of the country. I even failed when I went to the conference when I was no longer the president to raise the issue, which I I made it public that I'm going to this conference to actually challenge the leadership
of the ANC.
Of the ANC. And it was in that conference that the national chairperson could not give me a space to speak. I complained. I went to him to say, but I wanted to speak. I had said I wanted to raise issues. And then I was told, okay, I can raise the issues in the what we call different people in the conference having different kind of groupings, wherein you discuss the issues. They said I must discuss my issues. I did so. But my discussing that, it led them to do what they've never done in the history of the ANC, to postpone the conference for an unknown date. And that issue was never discussed again. It was clear to me that this was the end of our organization, and there was no need for me
to stay.
Having spent so much time, having sacrificed so much, to say, let me die with it. I thought I still had an energy to deal with the matter, and I still had South Africans who believe in what I believed in, and I thought it was high time that I establish another organization, not the organization that I joined, because it was no longer in that shape of it that I joined. It was a different kind of thing. And that's the reason why I then established this political party.
This is the point of view. We're talking to President Jacob Zuma, South Africa's president for nearly a decade, 2009 to 2018. He's in Ghana to, of course, commemorate the inauguration of President John Mahama, who was sworn into office on Tuesday. We're chatting about the African continent. We're also talking about South Africa. We'll spend a few more minutes discussing the future of his own political party and his aspirations for the next generation of African leaders. Stay with us.
Is this thing on now? I've been working long like a marathon now. Tying up words, making them a bomb now. Tell me, we too lonely alone now. I got a message when they put it in a song now. I see you later, all the haters got it wrong now. We're touching the lightning, we're coming alive, yeah. We're feeling inside, yeah. We got the power.
Tank 300, where power meets elegance. Call us on 0501 772222 or 0501 773333.
Here's Kwame and Yao. After hours of planning, both have locked in the same perfect multi-bet. Big win for United, over 1.5. And both teams to score in the London Derby. But who could have picked Leicester over City? Or a high-scoring game at the Bridge? There's nothing worse than having your perfect multi-bet missing. But there's nothing better than having it saved. Bet Saver. Win, even if your bet misses.
Fire pomudi ni agobio Ghana fu ni age efri say ya your local spices na ya frafra dia ya sankofa natural spice
me de go me jollof mu ni me still ahodoma e ma ne dance
darling the barbecue the go on
sankofa natural spices and one you use 100% natural said the happen
adofo mamunye huge mistake sankofa natural spices the FDA
ag ejedi nkratu yatu Are you tired of roaming for your medications and can't find them? Do you want to speak to a pharmacist or simply need privacy when buying your medications? Do you want your drugs to be delivered to you at the comfort of your home or office? Then it's time to download the Drugnet app, spelled DRUGNET, from the Play Store or App Store to enjoy total convenience. Use Drugnet, your multiple award-winning online pharmacy, for prompt delivery of all your medications. For further inquiries on Drugnet, call 0593 159 139 or 0501 646 496. And remember, we also accept all private health insurance cards. Drugnet, your #1 online pharmacy.
Welcome back. We're still on the point of view speaking to former President of South Africa, Excellency Jacob Zuma. He's here in Ghana to basically witness the inauguration of his friend, John Dramani Mahama, who was sworn in as president on Tuesday. We're chatting about the continent, but also about South Africa. President Zuma, your tenure, for those of us looking from outside, you can say was mixed. You did some really good things. You made, for example, university education free for poor people. You also dealt with HIV/AIDS, but there was still a lot of challenge with the economy. There were power cuts. Some even accuse you of wasteful spending and corruption. So you've described how the party you were part of founding pushed you out. But would you say that in those 9 years that you were president, you acquitted yourself to a point of excellence, deserving to continue?
I'm sure if you spoke to South Africans, will tell you that. I did a number of things, changing the country. It is precisely that my opponents did not like. That is why they felt I should not even finish a term, my second term rather, because they did not want me to do so. Some of the things we've just mentioned, I did that. Not just that, I changed a number of things. I was changing the economy of the country, which when I left, it was pushed out of the way. I was very clear what I was doing because I knew exactly what I was doing. Whoever said I did stole money, I did whatever, not a single one has produced even a smallest sweet that I ever took from a shop. Nothing. This was propaganda made deliberately just to push me away because I was actually implementing the policies of the black people in South Africa, and they did not want. Whites had bought black people who must stand against me, some of whom were in my own organization. That was the issue we were dealing with. And if that was not the case, when I established this party, I would not be having such a support to a point that on the very first elections, I've become the opposition.
Official opposition.
Official opposition. Wherein they took our votes and gave their friends our votes, making us not to succeed. And the case is ongoing now, which could result at my party getting all its what you call votes. And it might end up with us being in
Are you suggesting that the elections for the 2024 were rigged and that you could have had more than the 58 seats you had?
They were rigged. Seriously, there's evidence, overwhelming evidence to that. We would have won. And if this is the case, I don't think people would have voted for somebody whom they thought sold them out. It wouldn't. And I wouldn't be having the support I have now if that was the case. whatever they said, many who were told to say this Zuma is terrible have been actually apologizing to me in the country. Quite a number of them through the media, others talking to me. This, in my view, those who are against us realized that I was pushing what all South Africans from the time the Freedom Charter was established. I was pushing for that, and I will continue pushing for it. And that's why, therefore, the people of South Africa did not follow what the minority of whites and minority black were saying, because they knew exactly that we were following what was being given to us by the people of South Africa.
So, let's be clear, is there a court case challenging some of the results?
There is a court case, very serious one, challenging the interference that was made during the elections.
Your performance has been described as impressive. 6 months, you won 58 seats. You have seats in 7 out of your 9 provinces. So that tells you that there is support for you. But there's a view that this is because of Zuma the person, not necessarily because the party has any structures. And we know that whilst great personalities can start things, you need strong institutions for them to last. Where is the succession plan? You're 83 years old. So yes, you've done very well in 6 months to do great in an election, but it appears this is just because of Zuma. If Zuma is not there, the party may not do that well.
But can Zuma do that alone without the people? It's not possible. Can people within 1 year grow up to a point of actually taking the elections and being disturbed, being then the the party that is opposing government? I don't think it can just be the name. I think the people of South Africa, is not me. All I did was to tell them what is happening and what is the solution. And they've come to the solution. I don't think it's a matter you can say just happened because of an individual. If, as an individual, I did not know that people support me, I would not have done it. It's because I knew, because the party that had been there before was moving out of the way, no longer following the policies that the people of South Africa gave us to proceed with. So I don't think it is because of just Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma, yes, because Jacob Zuma started fighting for the freedom at his young age. Zuma had always said, this is the truth I stand for. I've never changed. I've always said, told the people what was supposed to be done. And people have agreed with that because they know it.
Your emergence as a party has affected the economic freedom fighters. There have been some high-profile defections from their party into yours. There's a view that those who believe the system is not working for the interest of black people should come together. Are there discussions with EFF and other parties like Inkatha to form a progressive coalition against what you consider to be the lost way of ANC and the DA?
As the party that I established, I actually met the black parties, all black parties, except those who were going with the whites.
Except ANC?
Except the ANC as well.
Okay.
I had discussions with all those parties that we are talking about. No, not with IFP.
Inkatha was not
because
part.
IFP had joined the whites. But all other parties I met, including the one you mentioned, led by the young man. EFF.
Mulema.
And we had Malema.
Malema.
I saw another Malema yesterday here, in a dinner yesterday. We all agreed on the perspective that I put, that this is what we need to do. We agreed. The fact that later they dilly-dallied is a different matter. But I did that, and we agreed that we must take from what our ancestors had given us. So I did all of that.
So it seems to me you think the ANC in its present form is unsalvageable.
Absolutely. It is.
Did you know President Ramaphosa before he became the leader? And why do you think it's gone so wrong? Indeed, the World Economic Forum in 2022 gave a warning that South Africa risks state collapse over unsustainable government spending, high unemployment, and collapsing infrastructure. This is supposed to be a lawyer, business person who was seen as a promising rising star in the ANC. Why do you think it went so wrong for Ramaphosa?
Well, I started knowing Ramaphosa when he emerged for the first time, forming a trade union movement, the mining trade union movement. That's the first time I know him, and then thereafter I knew him better and more. But I don't think I would want to comment about that part. But I've known him then, during the struggle, when he was a trade union movement, not necessarily involved in fighting for freedom, fighting for the rights of the workers. And I don't even want to go to that one because I would be unfair to him.
But we do know that COSATU and trade unions have always been part of progressive. South Africa's ANC has always had a strong support from workers. So they are a very inalienable part of the party's muscle, correct?
Yes, absolutely. But with him, it was a different matter, and I don't want to go further than that.
Let's talk about the future of South Africa in terms of leadership succession, because one of the problems with many African countries is when a strong leader leaves the scene, it's very difficult to get his replacement. So a lot of them are replacing their leaders with their sons. Mandela handed over to Mbeki. In a sense, you are the third generation in that line. And of course, after you said you were kicked out. But there's a strong cry for new leadership. Is the young man of EFF the next generation for South Africa?
Well, I don't know. Because you are talking about the Youth League in the Malema.
Yes.
They come from the ANC. They did not just emerge from anywhere else. They came from the ANC, dissatisfied with how the ANC treated him in particular, and then moved out and formed what we call, and then some people joined him. So I can't say it's a youth that is going to change any other thing. Because their ANC, at least that one, the organization we're talking about, its leader was brought up by the ANC. He's the ANC like me and everybody else. So there was nothing that you could say was very special and new. If that was the case, they would have actually assisted what I've done now, if that was the case.
What would Mandela be thinking about the party?
I'm sure he's very unhappy, very unhappy, because people changed the ANC into something else. Just to tell you the example, the oppressors that oppressed us for centuries, the ANC that we're talking about of Mandela, joined them today. They are together. Now there's no Mandela would have done so. That tells you how wrong the ANC has been moving.
Do you have hope for your country? You were the most wealthy African country for many years. A shining star in terms of even the freedom fight. When apartheid came to an end in 1994, everybody rejoiced. 2010 World Cup, everybody was happy you hosted for Africa. You've always held the flag for the continent at the international stage. The glory seems to be departing.
This is precisely the point I'm making. That the ANC that you knew, or you know, and the ANC that is there now is totally two things different. It's no longer the ANC of Nelson Mandela and his colleagues, because you had a kind of a leadership that was now leading in a different direction altogether, that can take a decision to join the white party and say we are in the same kind of country. That tells you this is no longer the ANC you know, or the ANC that Africa knows.
So the question is, will South Africa rise again?
South Africa, of course, yes, through Mkhonto Wesizwe Party.
The spear of the nation.
Absolutely, the spear of the nation.
The name is interesting because when it was founded, it was the militant wing of the freedom fighters. But of course, in 2024, that approach, we don't use spears anymore. Explain to...
Mkhonto is a spear.
The spear. So explain to the young people why Mkhonto Wesizwe is still relevant today as a concept.
No, because we are not yet free. Simple. We are not yet free. We still need to have an MK to free ourselves.
So even though we have been in power since 96, we are still not free.
We are still not free. Absolutely true. As I said from the beginning, we could not even implement a bulk, most important bulk or portion of Freedom Charter. We didn't. We only dealt with the rights, equal rights, blah, 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 which, fine. But they don't deal with the economy of the country, with the land of the country, with everything, the wealth of the country. It doesn't. We haven't dealt with that one. And that's why in South Africa you cannot have kind of business people like here.
Your neighbor Mozambique is in trouble and South Africa closed its borders. We would have thought that with the size of South Africa, you should be directly intervening. The opposition leader thought he won the elections. The country is almost closed down and SA has shut its borders. Would you have done that if you were president? What would you have done if you were president?
The real ANC would not have done so. The real ANC would be in Mozambique helping. That tells you this is another type of an ANC we have.
How can the Mozambique crisis be resolved?
It needs leaders around the region to do so. And I'm sure there are some attempts to be made now by some former presidents to try to help Mozambique. Mozambique needs to be helped. And I have also tried to talk to the comrades I know in Mozambique, because it is not acceptable what is happening in Mozambique.
A lot of your contemporaries are part of the Elders, the group founded by Kofi Annan, who are traveling around the continent helping to raise democracy and solve problems. But you're still in the rough and tumble of politics. As an old man, should you not be doing that job of being a peace envoy, traveling to help democracy thrive? You shouldn't be lacing your boots in court looking for another election to win at 83, should you?
I'm sure those who are doing so in their countries, they are in peace. In South Africa, I am not. That's simple. In South Africa, I've got it to free the people of that country who are no longer yet free.
I need to take a break. When I come back, I'll talk finally about economic empowerment for African people, Africa Continental Free Trade, and what economic freedom actually means to create a capital class that can develop the continent. Stay with us.
smile.
Are you dreaming of a beautiful and brighter smile? A professional teeth whitening service can make that dream a reality. Hi, I'm Tanya from Bethel Dental Clinic, Ghana. Zuma Professional Whitening Treatment is safe and effective and can brighten your smile up to 7 shades. Here are the steps for professional whitening. First, the gums are protected by applying a barrier. Then, the whitening gel is applied to the teeth. After that, a light is applied for about 15 to 20 minutes to enhance the whitening process. This application is applied 2 to 4 times to get you a brighter smile in just one appointment. Yes, in just one appointment, you get a brighter smile. Please be aware that a checkup and a professional cleaning prior to dental office whitening are a must.
Imagine walking into a secure environment you call your own, a home where you are in charge of your own security. But while you dream of a brighter future, shadows could be lurking at your doorsteps and windows. With real-time alerts and a professional response team ready to act, your home is protected around the clock, whether you're away or asleep. Don't wait for safety, create it. Installed by professionals, our systems integrate seamlessly into your home, guarding every nook and cranny. And with our rent-to-own plan, this unmatched security comes with no burdensome upfront cost. Enjoy your safety, payment at your own pace, and peace of mind. Plus, our theft guarantee protection ensures you're covered in case of any loss, giving you even more peace of mind. Secure your home with Home Shield. Make peaceful sleep a habit, knowing we stand guard. Response 1, protecting your world 24/7.
Here's Kwame and Yao. After hours of planning, both have locked in the same perfect multi-bet. Big win for United, over 1.5. And both teams to score in the London Derby. But who could have picked Leicester over City? Or a high-scoring game at the Bridge? There's nothing worse than having your perfect multi-bet missing. But there's nothing better than having it saved. Bet Saver. Win, even if your bet misses.
Welcome back. We're still talking to President Jacob Zuma, former South African president and leader of the Spear of the Nation, the political party that within 6 months almost took a third of the votes in South Africa, causing a stir. He's 83. He says he needs to liberate his people. Let's talk about economics. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area has been launched and announced. Indeed, the man who heads the secretariat is from your country. But it appears there's a lot of talk. Africans don't buy from each other. They don't travel to each other's countries. They don't like each other's food. They still believe in Europe and America. And it appears it's really just a talk shop. What do you think needs to be done for that real power of intra-regional trade to take off?
Part of the reason why we have established a new party and we are talking about real freedom in South Africa is precisely that point. If you are in South Africa, the wealth of that country underneath does not belong to black people. The wealth of that country along the sea is not belonging to black people. It belongs to the whites who came and who took that country into their hands. And therefore, you could not, as we are, having no resources, only resources with the whites, change the economy of the country. Impossible. For the economy is being handled by the whites who came, who are taking a lot of it out of South Africa. That's what it is. Part of the reason why we want to change South Africa, because we want that the economy of that country should belong as well to the blacks of that country. They don't have it yet. There are pockets of them who are trying, but even then, very difficult situation to reach any point. Poverty in South Africa, and have you been to Africa?
South Africa? Oh yes, many times, yes.
When we are in the big cities, what is next to the big cities?
Shantytown.
Townships.
Townships.
Are those people free? Why are they not having the big buildings and everything, or cities? They've got what they call kind of with something, we call it a small little thing that people create in order to come to the cities and stay there, literally, like people who are not owning the country, who are not part of the country, who did not vote. So we have a problem in South Africa, which is partly unique in its own way because of the number of the whites that came to South Africa in order to stay there to deal with blacks in the continent. So that is the problem we have. You can dream and talk about economy in our country, South Africa, but we as blacks will never be the ones who are handling the economy. The economy is being handled by other people.
What's the best approach to deal with this? Because when you look at the Zimbabwe attempt by the former president, it was painted as trying to expropriate white-owned lands and farms, and Zimbabwe has suffered from a lot of sanctions for the approach of the former president of Zimbabwe, Mugabe. So is your party and are the progressives going to use a similar approach to say, look, the land is ours, the gold is ours, so give it back to us? Or is there going to be a more subtle, market-based approach to claiming what you believe is rightfully yours?
Zimbabwe was punished, firstly by the British and all whites, because that position they took, where they were taking the economy from the whites. And therefore, they made it a point that they would not be able to do economy anywhere else. That's what they do. We in South Africa, we are not going to be the same because we are very clear what we are going to do. There is no person in South Africa who is going to be punished because of the steps we are going to take. For other reasons, which are not necessarily for me to talk about. We want to take the resources into our hands. Because for now, for an example, whether we talk about gold, diamond, and other things, they are not necessarily in the hand of the people. If they are not in the hand of the whites, they are in the hand of the government, holding it for the whites more than the blacks in reality. Because even if in South Africa you want to be a miner, you don't have the resources. Because the laws are such that whatever you want to do, you must first and foremost have money. And you cannot do it when you don't have money. And therefore, we are not necessarily going to repeat what has happened probably in other countries. South Africa is a big economy. But we are saying the big economy can't belong to whites, not to us. We need to be party to it in terms of what is under the ground, what is under the water. And we are going to make the laws that are going to change how the economy must be handled.
What's your assurance that it will not be just taking resources from white elite and giving it to black elite, when the real aim should be making it available fairly for the general population? Because there's a feeling of elite capture. And this is not just South Africa. Even in most sub-Saharan African countries, there's a feeling that when the colonialists left, the new governments just replaced them. They just became black, but they were elite, and they were also still milking the same resources. So power changed hands to black people, but ordinary people didn't benefit.
That's what we are going to deal with. We are not going to allow black people to own everything when other black people are starving. That's not. That's why we are not just talking about taking the government. We are changing the laws, because it is the laws that are doing what is being done. Every other thing, for an example, in South Africa, no black is owning a bank. It's almost like, without saying you can't have a bank, but they make it so impossible for a black person to have a bank and deal with that kind of business, because the law says so. So
still, after 30 years?
Of course, yes. That's the reason why we wanted to change South Africa.
Why didn't you change that law in the 90s?
Sorry?
Why couldn't you change the law in the time you were president?
You couldn't change the law when you came there under what we call negotiations. Countries that have succeeded are those that came in and took over, and then you take everything to a side. There we had to negotiate. Wow. And then it is the negotiations that said we can now start and have a country where we'll all be together, and then you'll have your own. But when you come to a point of having your own, we have no resources to do whatever. The land belongs to the whites.
Wow. Look, I have no problem with you. The only problem I have with you is that in 2010, we came to your country to play for the World Cup, and you didn't help us to win it. We lost in the quarterfinal. You were the president of South Africa.
I would tell you why. Because we did not put our own players to help you to win. That was the problem.
Did you tell your... for many people, the 2010 South Africa World Cup, for many Africans, was the highest point.
Absolutely, it was. It was.
How did it feel like being president, hosting that, wheeling Mandela into the stadium, playing the first game, and then Chabalala scoring your first goal? It must have been a moment of pride.
Absolutely, of big pride. But that tells you we had different leaders at the time who were leading the country. We were going towards a destination. That is what was stopped by the wrong people.
It's been good talking to you.
Thank you.
Have a great time.
Good talking to you as well.
Hopefully I'll see you in South Africa. I've been talking to President Jacob Zuma, who's been South Africa's, one of the founders of ANC, been there all the time, ran the country from 2009 to 2018, came here to celebrate the inauguration of President John Mahama. And he says the spear of the nation will fight for the freedom of the people. We hope you've enjoyed the interview. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Ago.
Hello. I know come joke for here. Good morning. Hello. Good morning.
hamburger we don't make fun with their toe. It's a combination of talent in burger. Just the talent.
All right, so we're halfway through the 2023 edition of the Heritage Caravan. Today we will be continuing with our journey, but then let me just do a recap of where we've been to so far. So we started our trip from the Greater Accra region to the Volta region. To be precise, we went to Amedope, where we used the canopy walkway. It was a very long hurdle for a lot of patrons, but hey, most of them, after the Thai rain walk, they say that it was still enjoying for them. And so we moved from there and went to lodge at the Royal Senchi Hotel. Luxury is what you can use to describe what we saw there. Great food, great music, because it was topped up by the Kwampa musical band. And oh my gee, you know how they do it. Well, we moved from there and then had to come all the way south to the Ashanti region. That was where the Bonre art culture was ready for us to give us an experience. We were taught a number of things. We were taught about the kente, how we get it done, and even the types of kente we even have here in the country. And remember, that was sponsored by European Union in Ghana, and so it was a very great episode there. Well, from there, we also went to lodge at another hotel and had to continue our journey to the Upper East region. That was a long journey. Trust me, we had to